All right, we're going to go ahead to bring the meeting. I'd like to call to order the City of Wilmington Board of Adjustments meeting. It's Thursday, December 12th. It is 1:02. But before we get started, anyone that needs to be, you want to swear in people now? Anyone that needs to speak today will ask that you rise and be sworn in.
I'm going to ask that staff, applicants, and members of the public who wish to speak today, if you'll stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and read the Board of Adjustment introduction. Hearings before the Board of Adjustment are quasi-judicial in nature. Decisions of the board are based on the record of these proceedings. To grant a variance requires a concurrent vote of 4/5 of the member of the board. To reverse or modify the determination of an administrative official requires a simple majority. Evidence submitted to the board for review becomes part of the record. Appeals of the board's decision are to Superior Court and are based on the record. Appeals must be filed within 30 days of the date of filing of the board's order in the Planning Division. A hearing before the board is conducted in accordance with rules of procedure. Those who want to testify in a case are sworn as witnesses. The chairperson recognizes those who want to testify or their attorney for presentation of evidence during the hearing. To ensure all testimony is properly recorded, please come forward to address the board, state your name and address, and speak clearly. All right, our next item will be the approval of the minutes from our November 21st, 2024 meeting. If there isn't a change, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from November 21st.
All right, is there a second?
Second that.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Those are approved. Our next item is old business. It's regarding 14 Wilmington Avenue. It's a variance pursuant to City Code Chapter 18, Section 18-316, and is to allow the removal of specimen trees and/or encroachment into critical root zones of specimen trees in the CS Commercial Service District. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Sorry, I'll make sure to talk to you.
Jeff, we've got a board member that needs to recuse.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did have that. We do have to have a vote for the recusal. Is anyone make a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And I've asked that we're going to do that for 2 items in a row, so we'll just go ahead and for the record have that for both items, if that's okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. And Alon, you're going to. All right, thank you.
Awesome. All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Grace LeMay, and I'm an associate planner with the City of Wilmington. Today for item 1, the subject property of 14 Wilmington Avenue is zoned commercial services and is approximately 0.8 acres. According to New Hanover County tax records, the property currently contains a single-family residence and several accessory structures. On or about July 1st, 2024, the applicant applied for preliminary review by the city's Technical Review Committee for 3 buildings consisting of 12 to 13 townhome units. On July 11th, the TRC committee reviewed the applicant's proposal and determined that there were specimen trees on the site that would require prior approval from the board to remove or encroach into the critical root zone. The applicant has identified 100 trees, 6 of which are considered specimen trees. The development consists of removing 55 trees from the site, one of which is a 26 live oak specimen tree. The applicant intends to save the remaining 5 specimen trees on the subject property, although the proposed development may impact the critical root zones. The proposed disturbance to the specimen trees' root zone protection areas include a 37% disturbance to a 25-inch longleaf pine, a 30% disturbance to another 25-inch longleaf pine, 24% disturbance to a 30-inch longleaf pine, 23% disturbance to a 32-inch longleaf pine, and 39% disturbance to a 34-inch live oak. The Land Development Code, Section 18.316, states that protected trees existing on a site prior to development or redevelopment that meet the size threshold prescribed in Table 18 18-316 shall be retained, and that the removal of specimen trees shall only be authorized by a variance from the board. Land Development Code Section 18-316 further states that disturbance within the critical root zone shall not exceed 20% of the critical root zone protection area. The applicant has requested a variance to Land Development Code Section 18-316 to remove one specimen tree from the property, and the applicant is requesting an additional variance to the Land Development Code 18-316 to disturb greater than 20% of the critical root zone protection area for the remaining 5 specimen trees. The applicant states the location of the trees in proximity to the developable area of the parcel significantly prevents the property from being utilized as a permitted use within the current and proposed zoning district. And the applicant has worked with city staff to configure the development in order to promote protecting and retaining 5 of the 6 specimen trees along the periphery of the property and removing 1 specimen tree which conflicts with the footprint in the proposed townhomes and the internal drive aisle of the development. The applicant further states the removal of 1 specimen tree will be mitigated according to requirements of the code. Mitigation for significant and specimen trees shall occur at a rate of 200%, which computes to a total of 52 caliber inches in this instance. On August 2nd, 2024, planning staff accepted an application for a variance to the tree preservation standards for a property within the Commercial Services District pursuant to Land Development Code Section 18-316. This matter was considered at the Board of Adjustment meeting on September 19th, 2024, and the applicant continued this item following a request from staff and the board that the applicant consider alternatives that promote tree save. On November 25th, 2024, the applicant submitted an updated proposal with alternative layouts that reduce the impact to the specimen trees on the subject property. One of those layouts we have presented to the board today. Should the board vote to grant the requested variances, the staff proposes the following conditions: that no tree removal shall occur until the site has been rezoned by City Council and a final site plan has been approved by TRC. The applicant shall work with city staff to continue to design the project in such a manner that specimen trees are preserved and protected, including employing flexibility of setbacks and waivers from the technical standards where appropriate. Any changes made to the site plan that result in the ability to preserve specimen trees shall invalidate the variance as applicable to those trees. This matter is set for hearing before the Board of Adjustment on December 12th, 2024. I'm available for any questions, and I believe the applicant is present as well.
Okay. Does anyone have questions for Grace?
Will you run through those supplemental standards that you talked about at the very end, those stipulations?
Which ones?
The ones at the
From the
very
staff?
end? Yep, the staff.
Yeah, so the staff recommendations that no tree removal shall occur until the site has been rezoned by City Council and the final site plan has been approved by TRC. The applicant shall continue to work with city staff designing the project in a manner that specimen trees are preserved and protected, including employing flexibility of the setbacks and any waivers from the technical standards where appropriate. And the last point is that any changes made to the site plan that would result in the ability to preserve the specimen trees shall invalidate this variance approval as applicable to those trees.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Oh, good afternoon. I just had a quick question about the requirement of mitigation. Can you talk to me just a little bit more, forgive my ignorance, about what that would entail? Does that mean that they would have to plant new species up to the amount of 52 caliber?
Yeah, so the city code requires that for every 1 inch of a specimen tree that is removed from the subject property, that measurement is taken at diameter breast height. 2 inches of mitigation trees measured in caliper inches shall be planted. So this tree being 26-inch longleaf pine would require 2 caliper inches for each of those. So 52 total caliper inches would need to be planted as part of the mitigation.
And the staff supervises that takes place ultimately, is that correct?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
that would
okay.
be a requirement as part of the TRC final approval.
Got it. Thank you, ma'am.
Anybody else? All right, thank you. All right, let's see if the agent or the applicant would like to speak.
Good Good afternoon, Jake Modesto, 16030 Moxie Glen Court, Charlotte. I'm the agent for the applicant. So last time we were here, back in September, we presented a plan. We had a different configuration. We spent a lot of time. That's why we had to push from our last application. We spent a lot of time on site evaluating and reevaluating the configuration and the trees. We had an arborist go out there and evaluate not only the critical root zone, but the structural root zone as well associated with each one of those trees. You may have noticed on the plan there were two circles that were shown. The first circle is the regulated at 1.5 times the diameter of the tree itself, which is the critical root zone. That's what's noted as one of our variances. We did that for every one of the identified specimen trees on the property and evaluate it that way. In addition, the arborist suggests that we take a look at the structural root zone of a plant, understanding that we can necessarily request a relief from the critical root zone, but if we had an implementation where we came in too far or too close to the structural root zone, that would actually degrade the actual tree itself and its survival. So that's what that second, the inner circle is. Rule of thumb, in reality, if we're out there planting and creating disturbance, the rule of thumb is 50% of disturbance within a critical root zone is a chance of 50% success in that tree living. We are well outside of that for every one of the trees that are left over. And the critical root zone, that rule of thumb is 20%. So that is why the middle one, the middle specimen tree located centrally on the property is being requested to be removed. The impacts would just take up too much of the critical root zone, as much as we've done with the layout to minimize that. That has been the result of negotiating the property. So we still have the same number of buildings located at the property, just configured in a different orientation to save the trees that are on the property. We do say that, as much as there's over 100 trees surrounding the property, several of the specimen trees that are impacting, we'll call it the critical root zone, or adjoining or next to the property. So we've done everything we can to minimize our impact to the trees on site. There's also a net reduction in the total number of trees we're also removing at this point. So I can answer any questions, yeah.
Questions?
I'd just like to say thank you for working with the city on reconfiguring your plan.
Anybody else right now? All right, thank you. We may have some other questions later.
Yeah.
So thank you. All right, we are gonna, does the city have anything to add before we go in? But, all right, we're going to go into the evidentiary hearing. At this time, I'll open it up to parties that have information that's pertinent to this matter and that would like to speak. All right, seeing that we don't have any, I'm going to go ahead and close that evidentiary hearing. Anything else from the city?
It's time.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the applicant or the agent? Okay, all right. Leave it up to members to see if you have questions or discussion.
From a discussion standpoint, I'd just again like to say thank you for working with the city on reconfiguring the plan and having an arborist involved regarding the saving of the trees. I think with reconfiguration and the effort that's gone into it on the applicant's part and the city's part, I think asking for the removal of the one specimen tree is reasonable.
Can we go back to the slide with the site plan on it? Yeah, there you go. I appreciate what the applicant's done to work with staff, but I think seeing all the trees on here, if you take the trees and then add the critical root zone circles around them, there wouldn't be any site left. So I think that, we've got to be super careful about over-regulation and taking property. And I think in this case, the applicant's done a good job of addressing our concerns.
All right. Anybody else? Does anyone want to make a motion?
I would propose a motion that we grant the two variances requested for the removal of the specimen tree and the variance from the critical root zone preservation is requested by the applicant.
Okay, and that would be adding in the three conditions?
Adding in the conditions requested by city staff for no tree removal until the site's been rezoned by city council and final site approval by TRC. The applicant shall work with city staff to design and protect in such a manner that specimen trees are preserved and protected, including employing flexibility of setbacks and waivers from technical standards where appropriate, and any changes made to the site plan that result in the ability to preserve specimen trees shall invalidate the variances applicable to those trees.
There's been a motion. Is there a second? I'll second that. All right. There's been motioned and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That matter passes unanimously. We'll move on to item number 2 in new business. It's the Legacy Point on Shandy Lane. It's a variance from Article 6, Section 18-494, which requires installation of sidewalks along Shandy Lane. Grace, you'll be presenting this one?
Hello again, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Grace LeMay, Associate Planner with City of Wilmington. Today, our subject property, Legacy Point Subdivision, is zoned R20. It's a legacy residential district consisting of 8 lots, approximately 5.78 acres total. The minor subdivision was reviewed by the Technical Review Committee based on the Land Development Code in effect at that time, referred to now as the Legacy Code. Legacy Point was approved by TRC on March 15th, 2021, with a site plan that included sidewalks as required pursuant to Legacy Code Section 18376, which requires that sidewalks, walkways, and other pedestrian ways shall be provided by the subdivider within or adjacent to a subdivision as deemed necessary by the Subdivision Review Board. The approved construction plan included a 5-foot public sidewalk easement along Shandy Lane public right-of-way adjacent to lots 1 through 6, as recorded in the New Hanover County Register of Deeds in July of 2021. The applicant states that there are no existing sidewalks along the Shandy Lane corridor and believes that the requirement will create an isolated sidewalk segment that does not connect to any other pedestrian infrastructure. However, the proposed sidewalk does connect to the required open space and shared docking facility of the subdivision. The applicant further states that the installation of the sidewalk would negatively affect the natural surroundings of the area due to the necessary removal of several trees, as well as increasing the amount of impervious surface area, which could exacerbate existing drainage issues. However, the sidewalk location and design can be altered administratively to retain existing trees. The applicant has requested a variance to Land Development Code Section 18376 to not install the sidewalk as required in the Legacy Point subdivision. Should the board choose to grant the proposed variance, staff recommends that any portions of the sidewalk that are not installed as required shall be subject to a fee in lieu to facilitate sidewalk construction in the vicinity of the subject property. This matter is set for hearing before the Board of Adjustment on December 12, 2024. I am available for questions, and I believe the applicant is as well.
All right, does anyone have any questions for Grace at this time? You do?
Yes, thank you very much. So I was looking over the map, and maybe we can go back to that, the one that shows the, yeah. So you were saying, so the applicant is saying a sidewalk there would not connect with any existing sidewalks or structures like that, but you're saying that it would connect with what? There's a dock or forgive me, I couldn't quite make that out.
Yeah, it would be on the right-hand side of the screen is towards the Bradley Creek Marsh. There is a community docking and boating facility that would provide access via this sidewalk, but there are not any existing sidewalks along the surrounding residential streets.
And this may be a question, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, more for the applicant, but otherwise, how do people then get to the docking facility if there's not already some path or sidewalk, or does that just not matter?
That we can let the.
We can
we'll
ask the applicant
yeah,
about that,
we'll let
okay.
the applicant.
Okay, and one last thing, ma'am, in terms of the condition that we might set that you all have proposed, I sort of see a gap between that and a statement that you read earlier, which was that the sidewalk could, if it's built, could presumably be adjusted a bit to deal with the trees that exist. So is there a difference between what you're recommending be the condition and a condition that would involve adjusting the sidewalks designed to accommodate the trees?
So at this point, they would have the option to either try and work with staff to promote tree save and not have to do any of that removal. That may require a re-review of the plat, as this is a recorded easement. But otherwise, they do have the option of paying the fee in lieu if this variance is granted.
Yeah, we have another question for you.
Do we know what the fee in lieu might be?
It is $35 per linear foot of sidewalk.
I don't do math. What's the total number?
I believe we have done the math, and it comes out to about a little over 24,000.
You said 24,000?
That's correct. So I believe after the driveways have been removed from the calculations of what the platted sidewalk is, it's about 700 some odd square feet, and then with the $35 per linear foot, it equates to about 24,500 something dollars. I can check my notes if you
Okay,
like.
yeah.
We have discussed with our engineering department as well, although I don't believe they're here today.
Okay, all right. Any other questions for Grace at this time? And we can always refer back to her. All right, thank you. Would anyone for the applicant or the owner like to speak?
Hey, good afternoon, Board. My name is Amy Schaefer. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. I do have a presentation, if you can pull that up. I'd like to thank staff for their presentation. Just to show you the area that we're talking about here, this is Shandy Lane. Again, just an aerial of where we're at. So the closest sidewalks or trails would actually be on Greenville Loop Road, which is quite far from our project. None of the neighborhoods in that area have sidewalks or pedestrian ways. This is our project, and again, this is under the Legacy Code. So let me reread to you what staff read. Sidewalks, walkways, and other pedestrian ways shall be provided by the developer as deemed necessary by the subdivision review board. At this time, there was no subdivision review board because that became the Design Adjustment Committee. I don't think this was ever deemed necessary by the subdivision review board, but it was approved with sidewalks. Upon reasonable evidence that the sidewalks, walkways, and pedestrian ways would be essential for pedestrian access to community facilities, such that it's necessary to provide safe pedestrian movement outside of the street. I think that's important. Sir, and I apologize, I don't know your name. That's okay.
I'm just, yeah, they don't have my name because I'm just the new.
You asked where it connects.
Yes.
The sidewalk doesn't connect to anything. The sidewalk ends at that blue circle, which then becomes a private access easement down to the docks. So there is no connection to anything. And most people take their vehicles or their street legal golf carts. Most people don't walk that far in the neighborhood. And again, it is just for these 6 lots to access the community neighborhood at the bottom there. And again, just kind of an aerial to show you the space that we're looking at, and you can see the boat dock facility down on the water. Just so you can see also, there is drainage along the roadway. There were no roadway improvements required as part of this small subdivision when it was done. The only infrastructure improvements required was the sidewalk. So as you can see, current conditions. I think this is really important and something staff didn't mention. The CAMA plan shows this as a conservation area and a watershed resource protection area. So what does that mean? Well, the CAMA land use plan actually says that we should not put impervious surface in these areas, that we should try to decrease impervious surface. And so, in fact, there's a recommendation that these areas have no more than 25% impervious surface. So to require a sidewalk that's not necessary for pedestrian safety seems highly unnecessary in this area, which is part of the reason that we're requesting the variance for that. In addition, the comprehensive plan talks about minimizing impacts on sensitive natural resource areas. And while pedestrian access should be encouraged, again, it should be flexible to accommodate environmental context as well as community needs. The community that we're talking about here is 6 lots, and they don't want the sidewalk. They'd rather protect the natural areas and the trees. They're already having drainage issues on some of the sites, which they're working to improve. In addition, Mr. Newman, I think you asked about the fee in lieu. I did check with that as well. So it's $24,570, and as the city said, that does remove anything for driveways. I will say that to ask somebody to make a fee in lieu to not put in sidewalks that probably shouldn't have been included in a conservation area anyway seems excessive. In addition, we've gotten contractors who said it's really about $5 a square foot to put in the sidewalk, so it would probably be cheaper for them to put in the sidewalk than to not have a sidewalk in a conservation area. So in addition to what we looked at from the Board of Adjustment variance requirements, we do meet these as well. There's no existing sidewalks. Sidewalks are not necessary or essential, and they would increase the impervious surface, leading to environmental degradation. They're isolated, again, not connected. The location, topography, and environmental features of the property would make the sidewalks burdensome, and the CAMA designation areas we talked about calls for decreased impervious surface. None of the hardships are results from the owners. They bought these lots. It was already developed and platted. They certainly didn't have anything to do with the environmental features. We believe that not having sidewalks here is consistent with the intended purpose of the ordinances, consistent with the CAMA land use plan, the comprehensive plan. Sidewalks in this corridor would not enhance safety or connectivity, and the variance would avoid environmental harm. And with that, we are available to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions at this time? All right, thank you. We might have some more, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Before we go into the next step, does the city have anything to add in regards?
No, sir.
Okay. And one question I had, relating fees in lieu, we don't have that's outside of our ability to handle that. We're just focusing on the variance as far as anything related to fees in lieu. I don't think it's within our purview, but I wanted that to be. It was raised, the question was raised about the relevance of it.
You're being asked to provide a variance to not require the sidewalk.
Right.
And staff is asking that you add a condition to be consistent with other situations similar to this. If somebody else didn't put sidewalk in across the city, they would have to do the fee in lieu. But in this instance, they're asking for no sidewalk, so there wouldn't be a stipulation to be provided. It'd be a condition that we'd be asking.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to clear that we were
Yes, sir.
sure about ours. All right. Thank you. All right. Yes, sir.
This may be for the city, maybe we know, maybe we don't. So if it is the case, as the applicant has indicated, that basically there are no sidewalks in this part of the world, does anybody recall, because I don't remember seeing it in the documentation, why a sidewalk was initially required and put in this, if it was not part of maybe some greater plan to eventually connect all these people via sidewalks?
Well, the greater plan is to have sidewalk across the city. In this area, there isn't because it was developed largely under the county jurisdiction in the 90s and before. The sidewalk requirement is a code requirement. It's been on the books since the 90s. So anytime somebody comes in with a major subdivision, the sidewalk is required. In this case, it's isolated. We do agree that it's not going to connect to anything, so.
So would it be the case, sir, that over time, eventually sidewalks would slowly but surely be built into this zone, which otherwise seems to be quite, shall we say, virgin in terms of sidewalks?
I think some areas are going to be more successful at that. If they're already developed, like the areas outside of the loop roads, they're largely developed. You're not going to see a lot of redevelopment. You're going to see minor infill projects like this, where you're going to see little pieces of sidewalk segment. Other parts of the city that you're going to see more growth, more redevelopment. Over time, you're going to see those gaps get filled in quicker. Yes, sir.
Anybody else? All right. We are going to move forward with the evidentiary hearing. I'll go ahead and open that up to any non-parties that would like to present any information relevant to this matter? All right, seeing that there aren't any, we'll go ahead and close the evidentiary hearing. Move on to if there's anything else the city would like to add. Grace,
Nothing further from the city at this time. Thank you.
anything from the applicant?
Just to reiterate what Mr. Chambers says, this area is largely developed, so I don't think there's much potential for any connectivity. And then again, with the fee in lieu, we would ask that you not include a fee in lieu, but if you do, we would ask perhaps some consideration on the cost, considering the fact that we have a much different cost estimate for the actual installation. Thank you.
All right, anything else? All right, do people have questions for anybody? All right, what are your thoughts regarding this?
I went down there during dog walking time, and there are no sidewalks really anywhere in the adjacent or neighboring areas, and it is developed. So I do think in this instance, we have a sidewalk that really starts and ends with this subdivision and doesn't have any connectivity or connectivity future to connect anything. So.
I agree with that. I think the point that it's a conservation area, when you're talking about tree removal and addition of impervious surface in that area, in addition to the fact that it's, effectively a sidewalk to nowhere. The waterway's at one end, and the closest other sidewalk is substantially far away. And then the other thing is, I would be opposed to a fee in lieu. I feel like that's paying for sidewalk elsewhere.
Anybody else? Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we grant the variance as requested and not include a fee in lieu.
All right, there's been a motion made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That the variance is granted. We'll move on to item number 3. And item number 3, I guess, Maggie, you can, we'll have a switch back of members. All right, we're going to go on to item number 3. It's for 120 Switchyard Road is a variance to City Code Section 18-325 for the construction of a 15-foot tall fence sound wall, a variance of 7 feet from the maximum 8 feet standard. Bentley?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Bentley Ernest. I am Associate Planner with the City of Wilmington. Today we'll be talking about 120 Switchyard Road. It is BADV 16-1224. The subject property at 120 Switchyard Lane was rezoned from MFMH Legacy to MD10CD Conditional District effective August 6, 2024 to allow for the construction of a 60-unit residential townhome development. City Code Section 18-325A allows fences in residential districts provided no fence, wall, or screen exceeds 4 feet in height in the front yard and 8 feet in height in any side or rear yard. The applicant has come forward to request to construct a 15-foot in height sound wall, a variance of 7 feet to the maximum 8-foot allowance of walls within residential districts. The applicant states that the fence will serve as a sound barrier for residents. Per the site plan provided by the applicant, the fence will be on the CSX Railroad property boundary without setbacks. Switchyard Boulevard is not considered to be a major thoroughfare. However, the proposed fence will only be along the rail corridor, which is considered a major transit line. On October 23rd, 2024, the applicant submitted a request for a variance to City Code Section 18-325 to allow the proposed fence to exceed the maximum allowable height of 8 feet within a residential district side yard. This matter is set for the Board of Adjustment before the Board of Adjustment on December 12th, 2024. I am here as well as the applicant to answer any additional questions that you may have.
Does anyone have any questions? All right, thank you. We'll probably have some later, as the typical. All right, is anyone here for the owner or the applicant that'd like to speak?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Sam Potter. I'm an attorney here in Wilmington, and I do have a presentation for you. In most places, we wouldn't have to be here. You know, you're allowed to have sound walls in most municipalities that adjoin a major rail line. So you're thinking about freight trains coming by your house at night. But unfortunately, there's just not part of the Wilmington City Code that has that provision in it. So we're here asking for a variance primarily to construct a sound wall that will insulate the adjacent townhomes.
Mr. Potter, can you put the microphone up just a little bit? You're just a little bit taller than,
Sorry.
thank you.
I'll shrink eventually, I'm sure. I'll shrink under the questions, I'm sure. So to provide a little more context behind Ms. Ernest's presentation, you've got the subject property, and this is an current aerial of the site. And to the southwest, you've got an existing apartment complex. On the other side of the CSX rail line, you've got commercial properties along Market Street to the north. You've got an industrial property that's in the triangle to the sort of southeast there. All of this is bisected by the CSX rail line that runs through the city. The property was approved in 2020 for 190 apartments. That was when Mr. Spatrino's company owned the property. My client, Switchyard LLC, rezoned the property a few months ago to build 60 townhomes. And in part, the reason for that is the middle of the property, basically all of the areas you see that are not covered with roads or proposed townhouses is wetlands. So in order for this property to be developable, you had to push the buildings to the periphery of the property. So this wasn't a property where you could concentrate your buildings in the middle, moving them away from the CSX rail line. They actually had to be next to the CSX rail line in order to make sense. So we'll talk about the peculiarity of the property here in a minute. You've got a giant wetland running through the middle of it and covering the western part of it. You all are familiar with the variance criteria. In the staff's original report, which is why I have this slide here, there was some reference to whether we were requesting an increase of 11 feet from the 4-foot maximum fence in the front yard. But what we are talking about here is either rear or side yards, which is 8 feet. So we're requesting a 7-foot variance to allow for the sound wall. As staff's report showed you, the wall will run along the CSX rail line. It is either in the backyard, well actually it is in the backyard or the side yard of the subject property. The red line there is where it's proposed. Going back to the aerial, you can see there's a large vegetative area on the other side of the tract. I don't believe there's anybody that opposes this. My client, Mr. Sabina, is here, and he's going to take you through just the current arrangement of the site and what this wall would look like.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Joe Sabina. I live in Raleigh. My address is 717 Lattice Street, which probably means nothing to you, but
Yeah, we need it for the record.
to
so I
follow
appreciate- yeah,
protocol,
yes, yes,
of course.
thank you.
Hopefully you can follow what I'm trying to accomplish or convey here. To the left is really the site plan, and I've got letters and arrows that basically show the point of view that match up with the respective image. And hopefully the punchline from all 6 of these images is that there's really nothing around that this sound wall would really impact negatively in terms of other residences, other properties. You've got the rail line in most of them. You've got vegetation around most of the other areas. You can actually see in letter A, the sidewalk is ending there, and you're looking straight down the south boundary of the property where you have vegetation to the left, and then the rail is to the left of that, and then the actual property that I plan on building houses on is to the right there of that tree line. This is just more of the same, just down the property line. Again, no residences impacted, no other properties really impacted in terms from a visual standpoint. Everything is covered by vegetation or the rail line or the berm that the rail line sits on top of. And then I had a rendering made of just kind of how this would set up. We haven't really selected the finish yet. It's a little early in that, but it'd be one of those type of 4 finishes. It's not too dissimilar to what you'd see along highways, buffering residences. You can see the rendering on the left. There's virtually nothing to the south or to the east and west. And obviously to the north, that's the proposed, I guess it's kind of an arts and crafts rendering of how the buildings would set up. The green space there that you see where there's nothing, that's common open space. What's not shown on that graphic is there will be there already is a lift station, a sewer lift station that's located right there in that open space. It will never be developed into anything else other than open space. And I'm here to answer any questions that you have regarding the development or our intent. Obviously, you know, hopefully it's clear that we want to build residences. We believe there's a demand for these types of residences in this particular location. It is an interesting location because it does have a rail line. There's a lot of industrial stuff around it. It's conducive to residential in our opinion because you do have great proximity to Market Street as well as the commercial to the east. And because the rail line is been there forever, all we want to do is provide our residents with as much protection from that rail line from a visual and sound impact as possible.
All right, does anybody have any questions? All right, thank you, sir.
All right, to summarize, you all have seen these walls around Wilmington. They are in other places. They're along Military Cutoff Extension. They're along MLK. There is precedent for them being here. Unnecessary hardship would result if this variance is not granted because it would cause these homes to be built in close proximity to the busy railway line, making sound and vibration that folks shouldn't have to deal with. The cause of the hardship is unique to the site. Primarily because of the wetlands that force the development to the periphery of the site as opposed to allowing it to have sort of a natural buffer from the railroad line. These issues were not created by our client. These were issues that existed prior to him acquiring it. And the proposal is consistent with the spirit and intent of the approved rezoning. The site plan, this particular site plan was already approved. It's a site-specific rezoning as a conditional district. And the Land Development Code allows fences up to 15 feet in height with a variance. So council, when they enacted the new Land Development Code, anticipated that there may be instances where a fence up to 15 feet would be necessary. And I draw a special attention to that because it says up to 15 feet, meaning you have authority to grant up to 15 feet, but I couldn't ask for 16 or 17 or 20 or 25. So this was specifically contemplated when the Land Development Code was passed, that there would be these special circumstances where a 15-foot wall would be necessary. And so for those reasons, we believe that a variance is appropriate, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Can you reference the Land Development Code that provides for the 15-foot fence?
I'm sorry?
Can you reference the Land Development Code that provides for the 15-foot fence?
I believe it's 325. Sorry. I believe it's the same code that we're asking for the variance under. I believe it's 325, but I know Bentley's looking at it right now.
Bentley?
So 18325 is our fence standards. For the way that it reads, and this is not a variant, this is a variance to the hardship, which he's presented in front of you today. But there is an option for a request for a variance to the fence standards. And part of that is that the fence, if greater than 4 feet in height in the front yard or 8 feet in height in the side or rear yard, needs to be set back at least 15 feet. So that might be where you're getting it from, but there is no maximum for fence height.
So there's no maximum for fence height? My understanding was that we were allowed to go 2 feet above what's allowed and did not have the authority to exceed that.
There's nothing that, I thought it was a maximum of 15 feet, but obviously I was wrong. So there is, you heard Ms. Ernest, there is no
Right.
maximum.
My question for city is, I'm not sure we can go up to 15 feet. I think we are limited to 2 feet.
So this is not a variance to the fence exceptions. This would be a hardship variance. So it's not going to be regulated, even though the fence standards fall in section 18.325, the way that you're reviewing this variance is through the hardship standards, the 4 findings of fact. So they are not required to meet the setback or the 50% above, the 50% opacity above the height limit.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Potter?
Can you walk us through the adjacent parcels and what some of the zonings are, current zoning districts are for those?
Sure. So you have what I believe is a conditional, with the apartment complex, which is to the southwest of the property there. I believe that's a conditional multifamily. I know the property to the south, it's in the triangle there, is industrial because I represent the people that own that property as well. I'm not sure what it is along Market Street there. I assume it's some type of commercial. I mean, I know it's commercial, but I don't know what specific type of commercial it is.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? All right, thank you. We may have some other questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to, anything from Bentley, anything extra?
I was just going to add in that if we would like to go back to the other PowerPoint, there is a map on there that shows the surrounding zoning districts. There's some CS, some CB, some O&I, definitely a good mixture of commercial districts.
Okay, everybody good? All right, thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and open up the evidentiary hearing. This is for non-parties to come forward with any type of information relevant to this matter. Anyone that would like to speak? All right, seeing that there aren't any, we'll go ahead and close the evidentiary hearing. Does the city have anything additional to add? All right, Mr. Potter, do you, anything else?
No, sir.
All right, thank you, thank you. All right, being that we have that, turn it over to everyone for discussion and thoughts about this one.
You know, the rail line runs through the city of Wilmington, and there's development along the rail lines throughout the city without 15-foot fences. I'm not sure I can get comfortable with the meetings of the 4 finding of fact. Having the wetlands is certainly peculiar to the property, but being next to the rail line is not peculiar at all, in my opinion. So I'm struggling a little bit with the 4 findings of fact on this one.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Well,
You're all, yeah, there you go.
how about now? I think the wetlands, to me, push everything to the edges and basically necessarily push it up next to the rail line. I think the reason I asked about the adjacent parcels is having an industrial parcel and an RB parcel and an O&I parcel. It's not like we're permitting a 15-foot sound wall to be built in a residential district. And I think that may be where the fine line is for me. So personally, I don't have an issue with granting the hardship variance as requested, because I think the preservation of the wetlands in the middle of the parcel is as important as anything else.
Anybody else?
I would say I agree with Tyler, but mainly because there's not anybody here in opposition, and I think it's far enough away from the adjacent multifamily that it won't be affected.
Yeah, and I do give the wetlands, that's that part in placement and the fact that we do want as much density as we can get in that, so. But anybody else? Anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, we grant the hardship variance as requested.
All right, there's been a motion, is there a second? All right, it's been seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed?
No.
Okay, that passes 4-1. All right, we'll move on to item number 5. This item I'm sorry, not item number. So I'm sorry, item number 4 regarding 1490 Allen Lane. I do have to ask to be recused from this one. I just need a motion for my recusal.
I'll make a motion that we recuse the chair from this item.
Is there a second? I'll second that. All those in favor say aye. All right, thank you. Patrick, thank you. Oh, the hammer, I got you.
I got to have the hammer. All right, here, item 4, 1490 Allen's Lane, variance City Code, Section 18-325, fences, walls, and non-vegetative screens for a variance of 3 feet to the maximum allowed 4-foot fence height within non-residential district.
Thank you, Patrick. Hello again, Bentley Ernest, City Planning. So this one is BADV 17-1224. It is for the Lane Townhomes at Allen's Lane, also known as 1490 Allen's Lane. The subject property at 1490 Allen's Lane is located in the MD17 CD High-Density Multiple Dwelling Residential Conditional District. The subject parcel plans to construct a total of 16 townhome units. City Code Section 18325A allows fences in residential districts provided no fence, wall, or screen exceeds 4 feet in height in the front yard and a maximum of 8 feet in height in the side and rear yards. City Code Section 18325D allows the Board of Adjustment to grant waivers for a fence height to exceed 4 feet in a residential district if the following standards are met. The fence, wall, or screen shall be set back a minimum of 1/2 the distance of the required front yard setback or the distance of 15 feet, whichever is greater. At least 50% of the area of the fence, wall, or screen above a height of 4 feet shall be open along the entire length such that clear vision is possible from one side to the other. And the property shall be located along a major thoroughfare. These standards may not be waived by the Board of Adjustment. The applicant has come forth to request an increase in the height of the existing fence from 4 feet to 6 feet along the Wrightsville Avenue corridor, which would require a variance of 2 feet from the Board of Adjustment. Per the site plan provided by the applicant, the existing fence is at least 15 feet from the Wrightsville Avenue semi-urban frontage thoroughfare. On November 1st, 2024, the applicant submitted a request for a variance to City Code Section 18325 to allow the existing fence to exceed the maximum allowable height of 4 feet within a residential district. This matter is set before the Board of Adjustment today, December 12th, 2024. And as you can see on the screen here, the applicant, we've calculated the math here, and the applicant also meets the requirement for the open area above the maximum height. So this variance request will be for the findings of fact that relate to a fence and what the board can grant for fence variances. So this will not be a hardship variance. Thank you. I'm available for questions, and the applicant is as well.
Any questions for staff? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here for the applicant?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Adjustments. My name is Josh Mahaley with Mahaley Land Design. I represent the developer in this case for the Allen's Lane Townhomes. We submitted this project a couple years ago. It's currently under construction as it was done as a conditional use permit. You know, at the time, the sidewalk, can I go back to the, there we go. It's a little hard to see, but this, you know, the Wrightsville Avenue doesn't have any curb and gutter, so there's a standoff distance to the sidewalk. That's why the sidewalk's located so far into the project, into the property. There's also a few large live oak trees out there. There's a 26-inch live oak and a 36-inch live oak. We always proposed a wall along the rears of the buildings adjacent to Wrightsville Avenue. As the project's been developing, it's been determined you just really need a little more fence there, a little more screening, a little more buffer from the road. There's several other neighborhoods along the Wrightsville Avenue corridor that have large brick walls. So what we've done is we're proposing that just the portion of fence that abuts Wrightsville Avenue that's kind of circled in red will be 6-foot fence. We're actually showing this to be a 6-foot column. This would be an oyster shell tabby wall with a wood detail above it. That's kind of shown right here. So in all, we've met the requirements of the openings and and have not exceeded the 6 foot, which is allowed to get before the board here today. I do want to note, though, that going back to what I was saying earlier about the sidewalk, you go to the site plan, there is a portion of the fence, there's a pointer, but right there at the corner of Building 6, that is actually like 12 and a half feet off the property line and not 15 foot. The property line has a little warble to it, and the fence is kind of the fence location is lined up with the buildings. So there is 2.5 feet there that goes beyond that 15-foot setback. And it kind of goes back to the fact that the sidewalk is so far back into the property because of the trees and because of the standoff distance from Wrightsville Avenue, which is required by city. So that is something I wanted to note there, that at that corner right there, it's 12 and a half feet. But we would like to show the fence where it's located on this plan.
Any questions for the applicant? Go ahead.
Thank you for coming before us, and I appreciate your making sure that this would fit within the requirements. But just a quick question, you said it was determined, I mean, I guess as this project has moved forward, that 6 is the better number. Could you provide a little detail as to how you all came to that determination, please?
I think we've gotten a lot of pushback from some of the people, some of the sales and some of the folks that want these units, and we do have a pretty substantial landscape buffer going in. We can put as much landscaping in our property as we want. So, but I think there's been a lot of concern about that with the general, from the people buying these from real estate and sales, that that a little bit larger fence would be nicer to have along that corridor, because it has gotten busier. So.
Okay, thank you. But the extra 2 feet wouldn't necessarily affect sound like the last case, I presume?
No, I think it's probably more visual, because they do have, each of these units has courtyards back there, so it would add a little more visual screen, probably a little more sound. I mean, if you're sitting in behind a 6-foot fence as opposed to a 4-foot fence, and if that was a brick, a oyster shell, concrete wall, I think it would affect the sound. I think it would be a more private place than 4-foot.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
The agenda says 3-foot variance, and you said 2-foot variance.
Yeah, I'm not sure I saw that in there. It's really, we're only asking for 6 foot.
Got it. So 2.
Correct.
Any further questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If I can interject for 1 second. The information that staff received showed the fence would meet the 15-foot setback, thus they were requesting the Article 18-325 variance to the fence. Since we've just learned that they are not meeting that 15-foot setback, we would respectfully request this be continued so we can re-advertise for the proper request to be brought forward.
Thank you.
If I push the fence back to the 15-foot, can we continue? Can we keep it going?
Yes, we can't use 18-325 unless they meet the setbacks, so that's not available.
So we can put it on the 15-foot in that corner.
Okay.
We can make the 15-foot work.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. I will now open the evidentiary hearing. Is there anyone here that has anything to say regarding this matter? Seeing no one, will close the evidentiary hearing. Anything else from the city?
Nothing further from the city.
Anything else from the applicant?
No further questions.
All right, thank you. Board discussion? Right. The applicant, the Board of Adjustment, he can come and ask for a 2-foot variance in the fence. That's within our purview, provided he meets the 15-foot setback, which now he has agreed to do, and that the top 2 feet is not solid. So in this case, the applicant has met all the requirements set forth by the city for us to approve a variance for his request. Any further discussion? Do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the variance request.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, we will move on to item number 5. It is my understanding that relating to 809 North Carr Avenue, that there has been a request for continuance on this item?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we received a request from the applicant to continue this item to your next meeting to discuss the proposal and potential alternatives, and staff concurs with that request.
Okay, all right, and that would be, what, January?
January 16th.
16, yes.
Okay,
I'd like to propose a motion that we continue item 5 to the January 16 Board of Adjustment date.
all right, there's been a motion. Is there a second? I'll second that. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That is continued. Next item is other business relating to a change in the 2025 meeting date and submission deadline calendar. We're, I guess, updating the June date due to a holiday. Additional information?
Yeah, the calendar that was adopted mistakenly included June 19th. We're requesting that the meeting be moved up 1 week to the 12th.
All right, and we have to vote on that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So there's been a change, and we just need a motion for approval of that.
I'll make a motion, we adjust the calendar as requested.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that passes. Is there anything else?
Yeah, when do we get to move back over to the Skyline Center?
What was that?
I said, when do we get to move our meetings back over to the Skyline Center?
As soon as possible.
Okay, thank you.
All right. If there isn't any further, I'll take a motion to adjourn. We're good. Thank you.